delegation of Felixstowe beach hut owners travelled all the way to Lowestoft on the 25th of May to face East Suffolk Council. The purpose of the trip was to go to the headquarters of East Suffolk Council at Riverside in Lowestoft to present their case for retaining all the 44 beach huts that are situated by the spa where they are now, on platforms or any other way. The council responded with a counter presentation of the reasons why they shouldn't be there, and the whole affair was well over 2 hours. So for briefness, we've just put the cases for as presented by the beach hut people and the case against as presented by the leader of the East Suffolk Council. We start with the presentation from the Felixstowe group.
They are saying that there can't be a permanent placement on the Prom, not an option to the community.
Thank you. Good evening, councillors. Principal reasons that we're here this evening are threefold. Our petition, I stand in front of you as the representative voice of over 4,000 people. Our objective is clear. So it wasn't to wipe the slides off. Our objective is clear. 4,000 people are calling on you to reverse this decision and find a way to allow the spa beach huts to remain. The third reason is the historical significance. These huts are now recognised as the oldest beach huts in the UK. Protecting them and not removing them should be our joint objective. This beach hut site, as I say, is the oldest in Britain. Huts have been continuously on this site since at least 1891, and they are in a designated conservation area. It's been confirmed by the UK's leading architectural historian that at least 6 of the huts can be dated back to the early 1900s and before. Removing them is throwing away our heritage and an act of civic vandalism. This decision has huge support from historians, celebrities and others in the media due to the fact that the original decision is contrary to East Suffolk's rules for the conservation area, contrary to the touristic commercial objectives of the council's own town plans for Felixstowe, and contrary to ESC's core values. 2 principal reasons are repeatedly given for eviction notices to be served on the 44 beach hut owners. The first is that they cause an obstruction. We refute the claim that these huts are an obstruction, as huts have wintered on the Prom for almost 80 years, since the Second World War. In addition, there have actually been no complaints whatsoever from the public regarding obstruction, including at the busiest of times. The second reason given is that beach levels are too low. The East Suffolk has a coastal plan strategy with a stated objective to hold the line. This plan addresses erosion and replenishment within the next 3 to 5 years, which we feel is a very small time concession relative to the century plus that these huts have stood there. The key, we think, is that we need to communicate. Please, can we talk? Our vision is to work with you to create a win-win-win, a heritage asset which would comprise new signage, information on UK beach hut history, educational days, heritage days, and so forth. And all the energies of these sorts of debates will be thrown behind creating this and making it a success. We believe that our platform proposal is truly the most viable option. Platforms are a proven, sustainable technology with a minimum 20-year lifespan, and there will be no health and safety risk if constructed correctly and by experienced carpenters. Examples exist on Felixstowe Prom today, some of which have been there for over 80 years. We invite you to visit and see them, as their presence is also, we believe, omitted from some of the papers that in the agenda in front of you today. We also like to thank the council for the idea of niches, which is a further strong solution, allowing huts to remain in this location. They'd be slid in and flush up to the prom. And either of these approaches will meet council objectives for cost, sustainability and safety. And the hut owners agree that this cost should not be met by ESC or your residents. The hut owners are prepared to pay for that themselves. This next slide, I'll invite the council to digest later. It's a summary of the win-win-win that we see in front of us. In conclusion, as I've said, we want to talk. I would like to draw your attention as well to the most recent communication, which I think should be in your packs, with a letter from the Council for British Archaeology, which really only came through to us last night. And I want to be clear to councillors here that, to everyone in the room, that a vote to remove the spa beach huts is actually a vote in contravention of UK national planning law. So please, as we have said, can we sit down and talk about this? And you're all very much welcome to come and visit us. I have a group of hut owners with me here tonight who would be more than happy to provide you with cups of tea and all sorts of other hospitality down on Felixstowe Prom. With the forbearance of the chair and your leader, Councillor Gallant, I have a small panel of individuals here who are now confirmed experts in beach hut history, and we'd be very delighted to have your questions.
I've got a presentation and it is a fair few slides, but again, it needs to be, and I'm going to be assisted in that presentation by Laura Hack, who's been working very closely with the Beach Hut owners and the Beach Hut Association and myself in trying to come to this. So I will start off and then hand over to Laura in a short while. Next slide, please. So members, just a reminder on the screens in front of you, and I'm sure you've got it in the papers in front of you, exactly what the wording of the petition is that we've been required and requested to debate tonight. I think the wording of the petition is one thing, but I think as alluded to, it goes much deeper than just the words that are presented on that screen there. Next slide, please. So the current situation as it is, there are 44 beach huts are on the promenade at the Spa Pavilion, which is the theatre in Felixstowe, those of you who don't know it, without a licence. The site licences were terminated for their positions on the beach on the 31st of March of this year. So invoices for the 22-23 year have not been issued to those 44 site licence holders. That is a deficit to this council of some £23,420 for the council in licence fees. So just for clarification, members, and there may be some members that aren't aware of how this works. Beach huts, the building, the structure, the wooden beach hut is owned by a member of the public or somebody. It's not owned by East Suffolk Council. We issue licenses for that. Forgive the use of the word hut. For that hut to be in a given location. So we issue the license for it to be there. The council submitted 4 planning applications, which were heard in March 22, which would have offered new locations for all 44 huts. But 2 of those were refused by the local planning authority, and there are members of the planning committee in this room. And it's not my intention this evening to get into the pros and cons of whether they should or they shouldn't, of what happened at those planning meetings. That is outside the remit of the discussion this evening. We have 30 new site huts have been secured, and licence holders have been asked their preferences for the 30 sites with consideration to health, and to personal circumstances. That does leave, as you can all do the maths, 14 huts where we have no alternative place for them as stands at the moment. And it is worth me pointing out to members now that the Felixstowe Beach Hut and Chalet Association have served this council with an application for judicial review, which was submitted on the 4th of May of this year. So we are subject to a judicial review process. Next slide. The council issues 1,675 licenses for huts and chalets right across the district. There are 919 licensed sites for beach huts in Felixstowe, and these huts, as I say, are all privately owned and can be sold by the owners as they see fit. Hut locations are moved from time to time due to coastal forces, beach maintenance or development reasons, and the last time that this happened was about 1,000 licenses at Manor End in Felixstowe in the 1980s. Currently, our licenses are issued on a 3-year term. So you can do the maths as well as I can. The 44 license holders make up 4.8% of the beach huts in the resort, and the 14 obviously just 1.5%. What's important here is who's to say that in the next 40 years or so, more relocations may be required. So we need to think carefully about the 919 huts that are at Felixstowe and the challenges that coastal management are faced with. And we need to, by its very nature, recognise the fact that the huts are temporary structures, and that means they are movable. And in decisions that this council makes now will set a precedent going forward about what we should and shouldn't be doing right across those 1,675 licenses that we issued. Next slide, please. So the spa site licenses, members, if you can focus in on the image that's on that screen there, you will see, and I do appreciate it's quite difficult for some members, not because of the position of the screen, not that members can't understand it, I'm sure they can. Those little boxes that you're seeing there are the positions that the licenses are on the beach at Felixstowe. So the Felixstowe Promenade, which sits behind that, has a highway status, is maintained by Suffolk County Council to footpath standards. Beach huts at Pier South, as it says there, Pier North and Spa have a license to be located on the beach, with the positions shown by markers on the edge of the prom, but a move to the promenade at the end of the season between October and Easter, simply for winter storage. Next slide, please. So you'll start to see on the images that you've got there about the issues that are happening in respect of the falling away of the beach material, the scouring of the beach material by tides, etc. So in July 2017, concerns were raised that beach material was being washed away under the huts located directly in front of the spa pavilion due to tidal erosion. And now subsequently, 9 huts, numbers 32 to 40, as it says there, were moved back onto the prom for safety reasons for the rest of the season, due to the continued, what they call cliffing of the beach within this particular bay. There's an image of it there. Next slide, please. In February, officers from the coastal management team undertook a site visit and determined there was not enough beach material in situ available to create a sand platform for any of the 55 huts at the spa, and the decision was made to leave them on the prom temporarily until a solution could be determined. On the 1st of March 2018, the beast from the east, you will remember that, members, I'm sure, concluded with Storm Emma, scouring beaches further, exposing concrete and metal structures from World War II. And the image you can see on the screen there is those structures. So prior to all this situation arising, those beach huts would have sat on a platform created on that beach that is no longer there. Hut licenses, license holders were written to explaining the situation, and a range of solutions were explored throughout the year, and a meeting was held with hut owners in December, giving options for relocation. Next slide, please. The option choices, as returned by the hut owners in that consultation, as you can see there, the first and most positive outcome that they could see was the beach platforms. The second was a relocation to Manor End, and the third was to Pier South. You can see the other options that are listed there. Move on, thank you. In 2019, I bring you forward now to 2019. Planning permission was received for the creation of 16 new beach hut sites at the Dip in Felixstowe. That's an area further north from where we're talking about at the moment, those that aren't familiar. There was a mixture of new huts and relocation opportunities. 2 huts have relocated here from the spa, and there are currently 4 spaces empty, which is part of the 30 that we have as relocation opportunities. The planning application was submitted to create a further 6 hut sites at Pier South, alongside the extension and strengthening of the concrete wall. This was rejected by the local planning authority committee on its first submission. A planning application to create 5 new hut spaces to the south of the current row at Manor End. Again, that's another area of Felixstowe, for those that aren't familiar, was granted, and 4 huts have subsequently moved to this location. Members, I've given you a sort of bit of an insight into where we are with this. There is a lot more detailed stuff that you perhaps need to know, not into great detail, but you need to understand what the issues are, why we can't just do this or do that or do the other. So we are joined remotely by Laura Hack, I hope, who is going to talk us, there she is, who is going to talk us through the next few slides, and then I will come back to you, offer some conclusions, and be very happy to take any questions. Laura, thank you very much, and over to you.
Thank you, and I hope you can hear me. Yeah. Okay, so carrying on with the timeline, in 2019, we put together a proposal for the creation of wooden platforms. This was what hut owners wanted, and we felt it was a good idea. But however, with advice from planning and coastal management and a structural engineer, the design that beach huts that currently sit at the Floodyears site was considered not robust enough for this area. This area of the beach gets scoured a lot more than at the Floodyears side of things. And it was felt that individual platforms, 1 per beach hut, did not currently meet health and safety criteria. It was determined that a large platform in alternative bays on which 8 to 10 huts could be placed would be the way forward. We presented these consultation plans to hut licence owners at a face-to-face meeting at Felixstowe Town Hall in June of 2019. We had some initial costings for these proposals, and these were costed about £500,000 for the 4 platforms. However, after further research, further discussion with structural engineers and coastal management, there were concerns over putting a business case to Cabinet for the timber platforms, and this was raised internally with officers. The project was deemed high risk, detrimental to the environment, not simple to engineer, costly, and only had a projected 20-year lifespan in this location, because the effect of the tide would batter it a lot more than it does at the Floodyear end. And there was also no guarantee of achieving planning permission. The proposed bays for their location were also not the preferred ones of hut owners. We had to look at alternative bays rather than 4 bays of these larger platforms. And many of them expressed a wish through the association to go back to their former locations. Next slide, please. So we came up with another proposal, which was a new idea, which was demountable concrete blocks, and this happened within 2020. We made a submission to planning for an engineering trial over the summer period to use 2 of the existing bays that beach huts had formerly been placed on at the spa. The proposal for the trial was an experimental design building up concrete retaining wall behind which sand would be infilled and levelled and the huts could be placed onto. The wall was proposed to be made of interlocking concrete demountable blocks, approximately 2 metres by 1 metre deep and built 2 blocks high. The costing for the trial itself was £131,000 and the cost of the whole scheme would have been just a bit more than 400,000. There was also a further annual cost for removing the blocks for the winter if we were to do this, which was £156,000 per year. Although the trial received planning permission, due to COVID hitting and the subsequent lockdowns, the concrete could not be manufactured as all but essential businesses halted manufacture. Next slide, please. Carrying on to 2021. In February, we had a number of storms and we had Storm Darcy hit the Suffolk coast and scour the beaches further. This put a halt to the trial as there wasn't actually enough material to instate the blocks onto. By this time, we'd run out of feasible options and the council wrote to hut owners stating that return to the beach was not actually possible in this location. We turned to other options available to us, looking at sites from Manor End all the way down to Clifflands, and we put a number together. We discussed these with representatives of the Felixstowe Beach Hut and Chalet Association, and 4 were put forward as relocation opportunities to hut owners. Hut owners were updated at a face-to-face meeting in July. The applications for the 4 sites were prepared in the back end of 2021 and submitted to planning. After working through over the 20 different options that we've looked at, these were the last 4 available to us. Next slide, please. In February of this year, the council wrote to spa hut licence holders with notice of termination and gave the date of the planning committee where all the 4 applications were being heard. If all 4 planning applications were successful, there would have been 64 new sites for relocation. That's the 4 new planning sites and the 6 we'd already identified that we had as well. However, the local planning authority refused 2 of the sites, totaling 34 hut spaces, and that left only 30 available for the current hut owners. Hut licence holders were written to and asked to give their preferences for the sites available and any reasons why they had preferences for particular locations. The council then received a petition that we're currently debating on the 24th of March, and on the 4th of May, the council was served with an application for a judicial review. So that's the timeline up to date as it is. And if we just go to the next slide. We've been asked on a number of occasions, why not replenish the beach? And I just wanted to touch on this. So we looked into this extensively, and to carry out beach replenishment required to the extent needed for beach huts, extensive beach material would need to be brought in from either a donor site locally or a quarry with the right type of sand. This map shows the identified potential donor site at North Felixstowe to the seaward of the golf course, which is an Environment Agency managed area. Movement of beach material from here to the spa would require a combination of on and off road haulage with double handling in between. As well as permissions for the Environment Agency, the council would also need permission and a licence from Crown Estates. Breeding birds use the vegetated shingle area above high tide for nesting between March and August, and as sand would be moved in April, mitigation for this would be required. There is great uncertainty around the longevity or the stickiness, basically, of the material, with thousands of tonnes capable of being moved by a single storm. So even if we could move it to this location, would it stay? The volume of beach material required to be imported to support the 2021 works was planned at around 400 cubic metres to create one planned sand platform. We needed 4. So this is £30 a square cubic metre at 2021 prices, and this would be around £48,000 per replenishment for the 4 bays. And we said on a worst case scenario, we would have to do that every year to give the required amount of beach material needed to keep beach huts in the spa location. Next slide, please. Next one is, why not beach management now? So the design of the 2012 works in Felixstowe, around the seafront, the groins, etc., did anticipate that beach volumes in the bays would actually reduce over time and additional recharge would be required. There were modifications to groins were considered as part of future works and were also identified as possibly being needed, subject to monitoring their performance. A recharge is included in the Council's capital programme for after 2025. However, the exact date of this cannot be determined, will be determined by the monitoring of change in the standard of protection provided by the defences. So this is expected to be several million pounds, and a central government granting aid fund will be needed. But this must meet the criteria. It is very unlikely granting aid would be justified for an amenity benefit grounds alone. The trigger for this will be when beach levels reduce to such an extent that the seawall is at risk, and this is not yet the case. It should be noted that the level of beach material to support beach huts on a platform is around 2 centimetres from the top of the prom, and that is much greater than the material needed for effective coastal protection. It may be that changes to the groins would improve beach stability. However, the cost of modifying one groin is estimated at about £250,000. We would need 5 in this area. And we've already touched on beach replenishment issues. Recharging the beach through dredging is an extremely expensive option. Okay, next slide, please. And why not the prom? Okay, so until 4 years ago, huts were only located on the prom in winter. The prom is an important tourist feature in the resort and an attraction in its own right. The bylaws for the prohibition of cycling on the prom were relaxed a few years ago, and it should be remembered that it has highway status. The beach huts significantly restrict the width of the prom and thus enjoyment of other prom users, and presents a health and safety issue, particularly to the safe passages of cyclists, people in wheelchairs and parents with pushchairs or escorting small children. There is a major concern by the council that during local events, restrictions created by beach huts on the prom push crowds towards this open seawall edge. Huts by themselves take up approximately 40% of the total of the width of prom available in this area. In addition to being used by cyclists, access is required by service and cleaning vehicles and mechanised equipment. Dust carts are 2.5 metres wide, and this leaves less than half a metre each side to pass in some locations. In the winter month, this is less of an issue, but the summer months sees the prom in use much more. Okay, next slide, and back to Steve.
Thank you. And can I just offer my particular thanks to Laura? Laura is COVID positive at this moment in time. Has probably only just got out of her bed in order to join us this evening and do this presentation. So many thanks, Laura, and we wish you well. It was her intention to be here, and that's why she's not. But there we go. So, in conclusion, members, and as you can see on there, the beach huts at the Spa Pavilion were removed from the beach and placed on the promenade as a result of the coastal erosion, the beach scouring, damage taking away much of the beach material, making the area uneven, low-lying, and more prone to further movement of the sand and gravel that is there. This is not something any of us want. You know, that's the first thing. The last thing I want is not to have those beach huts back on the beach. But that's where they should be, on the beach, not on the promenade. And I think that's the issue. So all this historical, they've always been here. They haven't. They've been there for 4 years on the promenade. Prior to that, they were on the beach. Now, we've looked at over 20 options for reinstatement. We have looked at over this 4-year period. We haven't just been sat there doing nothing. Laura and many of the other teams and officers involved in this have really looked at all the options that we can. And the last thing I would want to do is to take away from anybody something that they enjoy. That's the last thing that anybody would want to do, and the last thing this council would want to do. We've heard a bit about beach platforms, and it was mentioned by the representatives here of the Beach Hut Association, the hut owners, and it was also touched on by Laura. The way I sort of get my head around this is, yes, we have some huts on platforms at the Fludgers. The Fludgers is a pub just up the road, hotel pub, and opposite that there are some beach huts that are there on wooden platforms for those of you that haven't at the site. The way I sort of get my head around this is, imagine that I bought a building plot, and next to that building plot was a 16th century cottage. And I thought to myself, with this building plot, wouldn't it be a good idea if I built a replica 16th century cottage right next to it? Now, you know, particularly those members that are on the planning committee, that I would never get those plans through. They would say the ceilings are too low, the stairs are too high, the walls aren't straight, you can't get the level of insulation. That you know, planning regulations would not allow me to build a 16th century cottage today. Now, absolutely, that these beach platforms are not subject to the same level of building regulations. So I'm not suggesting that for a minute. Please don't think that I am. But they are subject to that due diligence, to the safety, and to the construction requirements that are there today. So it's not about building the same thing as we've got somewhere else. And it is not about looking at that place there and going, well, we've got one of those there, we'll do it here. This area here is subject to very different pressures and very different coastal movements than that place over there. They're two very different, even though they are relatively a short distance away. So we used consultants, structural engineers, coastal management. We've got one of the best coastal management teams in Europe, let alone in the country. You know, we have the best engineers that you could possibly have. We have employed structural engineers. We've looked at the beach platform. It's all very well the members of the public saying, we'll pay for them. Yeah, you'll pay for them at the cost, but not at the cost that we're talking about, in order for them to be both sustainable and maintainable and usable. You're talking about £500,000. You're not talking about £3,000. There is a big difference in those figures. And whoever builds them, we have this vicarious liability, this responsibility as the landowner, as the person that is issuing this license, to make sure that what we are issuing that license for, the use of that is safe and is appropriate. So members, it's really, really difficult. Can I have the next slide, please? Yeah.
To give it a fair hearing, I would like to suggest that we have another 30 minutes. So I need to propose in a second.
Well, clearly, Madam Chairman, I'm very happy to propose that. We do extend to that.
Second. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you. That's carried.
Thank you. And actually, I didn't see much reluctance on the faces of the members, so thank you for that. It is an important issue, and certainly important for the people we've got. That's my final slide. So members, what is it that I would be asking of full council this evening? And this is not a proposal this time. I'm very happy to take as many questions as you want to throw at me. I'll bring in the experts should I need to, and I'm very happy to listen to your suggestions and to enjoy a full debate on this matter within the next 30 minutes. But at this moment's time, as I stand before you, this is what I'm asking for from full council. I'm asking that full council shares in the disappointment expressed by the 44 affected beach hut owners. And that is a disappointment that anyone would feel if something that they enjoyed on a regular basis was compromised, was changed, was taken away from them. I think it would be right that we would feel disappointed about that as well. We acknowledge that coastal erosion is an escalating issue and ongoing risk to our resorts, assets and facilities. I think it is right that we can and we should acknowledge that. I think and I would ask for your benevolence in this, that we appreciate the hard work of officers. I've seen that firsthand, and I know some of the members of the public too have seen the hard work of officers to find a solution acceptable to all parties. I would like us to acknowledge that. To recognise the permanent placement of huts on the promenade will restrict its use by the wider community. All I'm asking you to do is recognise that that is an impact. I'm asking you to recognise that that will restrict its use by the wider community. I would ask that we remain willing to engage in mediation regarding new ideas, and this is about new ideas for relocating the 14 huts left without the site. And finally, I would ask that full council supports the actions to date and directs the results of the judicial review that are reported back to full council in due course. Those are the things that I'd ask you to consider this evening. I won't deliver those as a propositions, as a proposal at this time, but I'm very happy to take any questions or join in any debate. Thank you, Madam Chairman. Thank you, members.